Paleontologist David Huxley wants very simple things, really. He wants the bone to complete his Brontosaurus skeleton. He wants to get married to his fiancée. He wants to secure $1 million donation to his museum from a very rich woman who's willing to give away $1 million. And he seems well on his way to getting these things. Until Susan Vance stumbles into his life. And then what with the car thieving and the bone and the leopard and the game hunter and the fact that Susan is positively insane, it's just one hilarious misunderstanding after another. Before we had Mel Brooks and Monty Python, it was the screwball comedy where we went to get our dose of ridiculous. And for those of you who thought that me watching the AFI Top 100 list was going to be vaguely depressing, what with all of the sad artsy films on there, get ready for a hilarious romp. Let's look at the 1938 screwball comedy starring Cary Grant and Katherine Hepburn, Bringing Up Baby, and find out what's all the fuss about.
Do you follow me?
Not guilty.
Fight in here. This is a
Shoot your eye out, kid.
Why is the run going so serious?
Well, you don't understand. This is my car.
You mean this is your car?
Of course.
Your golf ball, your car? Is there anything in the world that doesn't belong to you?
Yes, thank heaven, you.
Now, don't lose your temper.
But, my dear young lady, I'm not losing my temper. I'm merely trying to play some golf.
Will you choose the funniest places? This is the parking lot.
Will you get out of my car?
Will you get off my running board?
This is my running board.
All right, honey, stay there.
The screwball comedy formula is simple enough. Any ridiculous thing that can go wrong and be completely hilarious in doing so will go wrong. And that's what we have here. The misunderstandings that arise from Grant and Hepburn's bumbling adventure are just too hilariously outlandish to be believed. But between Susan Vance's fast talk and mischievous attitude and Cary Grant's complete inability to explain anything, or even get a word in edgewise, it's little wonder why these things happen. You almost feel as though this movie was conceived by getting a bunch of comedy writers in a room together and saying, okay, we've got Cary Grant and Katherine Hepburn playing a bumbling paleontologist and an adventurous thrill seeker. Bring on the jokes. And so the writers just started throwing jokes out there. Smart jokes, dumb jokes, obvious jokes, subtle jokes, physical jokes, cerebral jokes, and as the night wore on and it got later and later, someone said, hey, let's give him a leopard. The humor in this movie is just all over the place. You've got everything from predictable pratfalls to fast-paced dialogue. There's absolutely nothing slow or boring about this movie. The jokes are being thrown at you a mile a minute, and it's all building up to one of the most hilariously outlandish situations ever. I mean, it doesn't get much screwier than this. So what's all the fuss about? Well, modern screwball comedies, and indeed a lot of comedies today, owe a lot to this movie and others of its kind. To me, this is honestly one of those movies where there wasn't a single bad moment, a single moment that I did not enjoy. The two main actors are funny, the supporting cast is funny, the writing is funny, the pacing is absolutely perfect. Everything about this comedy just fits together and works. You really get the feeling that the writers and the director of this film weren't afraid to go all out on this one, that they weren't going to pull any punches. Anything that could conceivably be funny was gonna go into the film. On top of that, the characters are all very likable, and Grant and Hepburn in particular have some great chemistry together on screen. Even though Susan Vance makes David Huxley absolutely crazy, you really do buy the romance between them. Now, granted, there's no real rhyme or reason why Susan Vance suddenly fixates on David Huxley, aside from, Cary Grant, but you still buy the romance as being legitimate. And realism really isn't the main focus of this movie anyway. I mean, there's a tame leopard in it, for crying out loud, which, by the by, requires quite a bit of creative directing. This is comedy back before gratuitous swearing and obvious jokes about sex were allowed on screen, and by golly, they still manage to be completely hilarious. Even today, the movie's comedy manages to hold up remarkably well, and modern-day comedies could take a few lessons from this movie. If you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to check it out. The fuss is definitely merited, and on the worth meter, I would give this a worth owning. And now, for real, the next film on the AFI list is the classic horror flick, Frankenstein. See you next time. And now, for real, the next film we're going to look at on this list is the classic horror flick, Cars Outside the Window. See you next time. And an adventure-seeking thrill seeker. An adventure-seeking thrill seeker? No, that's not what you're looking for. That's not what you're looking to say.